Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. It's Monday. We just had a Super Bowl weekend, ready to get back focused on the NBA. I'm Trevor Lane. You can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane, on Instagram at Trevor Lane NBA. Keith Smith joining me at Keith Smith NBA over on the Twitter machine. Keith, Super Bowl's come and gone. It was a pretty fun game. Maybe not as high scoring as we would have hoped, but the Rams do walk away with the win by getting the touchdown towards the very end of the game, so that was pretty exciting.
Yeah, I don't understand how Cooper Kupp is just always open. Like it's crazy, right? He's just that guy who's always open, and that's credit to him. Obviously, I'm not saying it was anything that they leave him open. He's really really good. I was reading a lot of stuff that may be the single best season of wide receivers ever had, combined regular season and playoffs. So yeah, congratulations to the Rams. My one of my best friends in the world, Pete Driscoll, big listener to our show here. He is thrilled. He's a huge Rams fan. He when he was growing up as a kid, when we were growing up, the Patriots were the joke of the NFL, and he picked a team as far away from New England as he could, and he picked the then LA Rams. Stuck with them through the St. Louis years and gone back. And Jason Tatum, after their game yesterday afternoon, was asked by Malika Andrews who was going to win, and his answer was the St. Louis Rams, and then he ran off the floor. So I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, it was fun weekend. It was a nice time for it to kind of decompress from the trade deadline a little bit, because it was man, I needed a little bit of a breather for the NBA to kind of chill for a day.
It was. I don't think I'm ready for the All-Star break. I think I'm going to be going through basketball withdrawals like that. It feels like that's too long. I'm already looking ahead and kind of nervous about that, how long that break is going to be.
That first day or two will be fun.
Yes.
And then it'll be like, what do I do tonight? Like, why is there no game on? And I know people will say college basketball, but man, I'm still a couple weeks from that. Get me to the conference tournaments, and then I'll watch college hoops.
Right.
Before then, I'm good.
But we would be remiss if we missed, the big moment from last night, the Multiverse of Madness trailer that came out. I mean, they call it marking out in the professional wrestling world. My wife is sitting on the couch. My daughter is on the other side of me. And when what we think might be Professor X popped up, I went, oh my God. And she looks at me, she goes, what? But the game's not even on. I said, you don't understand what's happening right now.
and then like I get a text from you like seconds later, like, oh my God, the trailer. And I was like, did you watch the full one that they tweeted? And like, oh my God, man. Yeah, I was I couldn't have been more excited. I was so fired up for that. It was, it looks so good. I'm not so patiently waiting on new rock stars and Eric Voss to come out with the frame by frame breakdown. I have not seen it yet, so that's on my list to do later today. Yep. But we digress. Let's get into
Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's start with James Harden. Right now on another new team with the Philadelphia 76ers. But of course, because this tends to happen, whenever there's a breakup, the dirty laundry tends to get aired out. And so now, Keith, we're starting to hear some stuff about what really went down between the Nets and James Harden. There have been a few different pieces on it. What's been your overall takeaway from all this stuff that's been coming out?
Very unsurprising that this stuff is coming out, and more will come out probably over the next month or so. And then probably the first time they play each other, there'll be a couple more things. And then probably like a year from now, someone will write the big tell-all of everything that went down from the time Harden joined the Nets. But yeah, not exactly surprising. That this is coming down. Some of the things we've heard is he and Kevin Durant weren't really talking in the weeks leading up to the trade deadline. It was a little unclear. Was that upset with each other thing, or they just weren't talking? There's been a lot of stuff that's come out about Kyrie's the real problem and those kind of things. And that's, anything with Kyrie, positive, negative, anything I take, with a massive grain of salt, because I don't think anybody gets covered quite the way he does in the NBA. And then, we're hearing now the news that we really care about is he's not going to play through the All-Star break.
Mm-hmm.
For the 76ers, he's going to keep working on that hamstring. So that removes any question of was he really hurt or not. Clearly, he was obviously hurt. Otherwise, he would be playing as soon as possible for the Sixers. So they got a couple games left this week before the All-Star break, and he's not going to play in any of them. So and then we'll see. And then he's not going to take part in the All-Star game, which means that there'll be a replacement named for him in the All-Star game, and maybe another guy we're going to get to a little later in the show, Adam Silver may be replacing as well. So let's see ultimately how this all comes together.
If you got to decide, Adam Silver calls you up, says, Keith, who gets the All-Star spot for James Harden? Who are you giving it to?
Jared Allen. I think Jared Allen should have made it anyway. So I think he should get that spot. He's also the home guy. Give the Cavs fans another guy there to really get crazy about in Cleveland. And like you said, he should have made the team to begin with. So yeah, that one's kind of a no-brainer. If we get into another guy, then at the risk of making Celtics fans mad, I think maybe Pascal Siakam should go. He's had a great year. But maybe Jaylen Brown. I don't. It gets a little trickier there. Drew Holiday maybe. I would add Drew Holiday ahead of Chris Middleton anyway, in my All-Star pecking order. But yeah, Jared Allen for sure should replace James Harden.
That's some impressive anti-homerism there, I suppose, or however I want to put it. Because I was waiting to hear Jaylen Brown's name come out of your mouth there, but you went the other direction. That's pretty good. But I would.
And I'm not just playing it either. Like Allen should have been there anyway. I did not pick Jaylen Brown when we did our All-Star picks. And Siakam's been really, really good. I tweeted this the other day. It's really crazy. He plays he normally has started regularly at the 5 for them when all of their guys are healthy. When they're not, when Fred VanVleet is out, they list him as the starting point guard. Like nobody else in the league is like dropping in a box score at the 5 and the 1 both, and he's been really successful the whole way through. So anyway, there's my thought.
I agree. I would also go with Jared Allen. We should mention that James Harden did ask for a trade from the 76. That was or from the Nets. That was a little bit of a detail that came out. It was also interesting the strategy that he took, that he was trying to passive aggressively send the message that he didn't want to be there anymore because he didn't want the blowback from asking out from another team. And but it didn't. I don't think it mattered whether you're passive aggressive or not. People read into that stuff. People read into that stuff a ton. If people analyze quotes over and over and over again, if you say anything that doesn't sound, that leaves any window to I might consider going somewhere else, they're going to pounce upon that. So
exactly. I tweeted at the time that this whole thing was going on of just ask for a trade then, because you've essentially done the same thing. You're going to get judged the same exact way. If anything, you get judged harsher for not just coming out and saying, I don't want to be here. So that whole thing was silly.
Yep. Agreed. Okay. Let's get into, before we leave the Nets, Sean Marks is hoping that Kyrie Irving can eventually play in home games. So that would require the mandate to be changed. Maybe that happens. Obviously, if you're the Nets, you're hoping it happens before playoff time, because that could definitely matter there. We also have to wait and see when Ben Simmons will be able to play for the Nets as well. We'll see what goes on with that.
Yeah, we still don't have any update on Simmons either. I'm guessing that's also an after the All-Star break thing for sure. Probably, my guess is maybe right after. Maybe he comes back then. That should have given him enough time to, do whatever he had to do. So I think the Kyrie stuff too, in the actual article with the quotes from Sean Marks, he very much said it was about lifting the mandate, not about Kyrie getting vaccinated, but just that as the world continues to change and we evolve policy around coronavirus and all that, he hopes that they ultimately change as well. Let's
get into our least favorite topic, injuries, which unfortunately do happen in the NBA.
So many, man. A lot. It's crazy.
A lot. But all right, let's get into one that's at least somewhat positive. Miles Turner, obviously been out dealing with the stress reaction in his foot. However, it's hopeful that he will return after the All-Star break. How soon after, we'll see. You got to be careful, particularly with a big guy with a foot injury like this. But I am curious to see what Miles Turner by himself, now that Sabonis is gone, you bring in Halliburton, what can he look like in there on his own. That's piqued my interest. And so whenever he gets back, I'm hoping that he can stay fully healthy and we get an idea of what that really is. And it's important for the Pacers to find out as well, because just because they didn't trade him at the deadline doesn't mean they're not going to trade him this summer. So they still need to find out what they've got here in Miles Turner. Can he be the lone big? Does that improve him? What becomes of him when he's in that scenario? So I'm curious to see how this plays out for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's been a couple people that have said, why would they even bring him back? And my thing is, they're doing quite fine on losing games with or without him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's going to really change things. They are they're 8 games out of the play-in, so that's clearly like that ship has sailed. That's not happening. But then there's 6 games clear of the teams at the bottom of the conference too. So maybe they could lose enough to catch up to the Rockets or the Thunder and drop into a top 3 positioning. But that might happen anyway. I think it's more important really evaluate what we've got the rest of the way here. Get Turner back, get Malcolm Brogdon back. Chris Duarte got hurt yesterday. He's going to miss a couple games, but it doesn't sound like it's anything serious. Sounds like he's got a jammed toe, or I think it was. So jammed toe, not toe jam, just to be clear. So I saw your smile there out of the corner of my eye.
It crossed my mind there for a moment.
So yeah, but let's see. I mean, they've been kind of fun the last couple games with Tyrese Halliburton, kind of leading the way, and you're seeing what it kind of looks like with him as the full-on lead dog of a team now. So yeah, I'm very curious to see what they become with Turner in the lineup and what that group could potentially look like.
Moving on, talking about, more foot injuries. John Collins is now going to be out through the All-Star break, and he's been really good for the Hawks this year. Obviously, was not traded at the deadline. There were some rumors that he could potentially be moved, but the Hawks, I believe this was the right decision, decided not to move him. But out through at least the All-Star break for the Atlanta Hawks, and this is a team who, they need to win games. They need to pick up wins. As of right now, they're sitting in the 10 seed in the Eastern Conference, so we'll see. Hopefully they can get him back sooner rather than later, because as of the moment, I mean, look, the Wizards haven't looked great, but they only have half a game lead on Washington right now for the 10th spot.
And only a game and a half on the Knicks, too. Mm-hmm. They are now 6 games behind the Celtics, who moved into the 6th seed, that final assured playoff spot. They're 2 behind the Hornets, 3 behind the Nets. So, yeah, you got to pick up the pace if you're Atlanta. Otherwise, you're facing the toughest road of the play-in teams. That's assuming you hold off Washington and the Knicks, and we'll get to Washington in a minute. I don't know that holding off the Wizards is going to be all that large of a challenge, for the Hawks. But you got to hold off the Knicks, because the Knicks have no reason to play the bottom this thing out. They're going to keep going. They're trying to win games. So yeah, let's see, ultimately where that goes with the Hawks. But yeah, they were not the same team yesterday against the Celtics. So they played Super Bowl afternoon, and the Celtics really hammered them in the second half and took control of that game and kind of pseudo ran away with it late. It wasn't a blowout or anything, but they were in control from the late third quarter all the way through the fourth.
Derrick White looks like he's fitting in pretty well with the Celtics. I mean, I don't want to say seam. I'm sure there's still some things that can be worked on around the edges and things like that, but looks pretty comfortable out there in their system on the offensive end, and certainly defensively.
Yeah, what they've done is they've stuck. And so before the trade deadline, Ime Udoka dropped into an 8-man rotation, which is really kind of playoff style. You don't see that very often in the regular season. But that's part of why they started playing better, because what he did was he got rid of all the kind of dead weight minutes that guys who probably shouldn't have been on the floor were playing. So what's happened is he's stuck with that, but he's tweaked it slightly. Rather than like 8 guys all getting 30-ish minutes, Peyton Pritchard's only getting about 10 minutes a game, and it's only been a couple games. But so Derrick White has eaten up all the Josh Richardson minutes plus a good chunk of the Dennis Schroeder minutes, and he's kind of given them everything they were getting from Richardson, plus better pure point guard play than Schroeder was, because he's kind of getting the ball and going. He's super quick, decisive. It's so far, I said this yesterday, A+ for me on that trade, because I think he's been really, really good. And they're 8 straight wins now for the Celtics. They've got the best point differential in the Eastern Conference. I think it's 3rd or 4th or maybe 5th, depending on what the Grizzlies have done recently in the NBA. So they're way up there with that. And they're since I want to say it's like mid-December. They've got the best defense in the league, and it's by a really healthy margin too. And that's how they're winning these games. They're holding teams under 100 points with regularity now, and that helps mask some of the offensive issues that they still have. I'm gonna throw you a curveball here. Not on the show outline. With a couple days of retrospect now, and maybe seeing some guys, what's your favorite trade now so far from the deadline?
Ooh.
Of the one guys we've actually seen.
Yeah, that's the challenge, is that we haven't seen some of these guys yet. Like my initial, the first thing that pops into my mind is I want to see what Kristaps Porzingis looks like with the Wizards, because I do kind of like that as a high ceiling type move for them. The Norman Powell injury, which we're going to get to, that's a big blow for the Clippers. That probably would have been one of my favorite moves, certainly, because I think he's a guy that helps them a lot.
Yeah.
Derrick White,
and he was playing well for them. In 3 games, he averaged over 20 points per game, and
right. And so that's where I'm looking right now. But unfortunately, the injury kind of takes away from that. Let me hit you with something that's a little bit. It's a little not truly off topic or anything, but
sure.
I think that the players who made out the best out of anybody at the trade deadline are guys on the Oklahoma City Thunder, because the Thunder didn't take on a big trade, absorbing a bunch of salary.
Yeah.
Because now they get all that money that they are below the salary floor. All of that now gets divided amongst the players that are on the team. Now they signed Aaron Wiggins, so we'll have to talk about that.
Yeah.
But they're going to take all the money that's left between what they're paying and what the salary floor is at, and that all gets distributed among the guys that are already on the team. So those guys must have been thrilled that the Thunder didn't eat a big salary at the deadline.
It goes, Zach Lowe said something like, if they see Sam Presti on the phone with an agent, they're going to take his phone and throw it out the window or something like that, or, something along those lines. Yeah. Let's talk about the Aaron Wiggins thing real quick. Converted him from a 2-way contract. He'd actually started in 18 games for them. Now it's the Thunder. They've tried kind of all kinds of sorts of, different starting lineups and different groups, but Wiggins has played pretty well, shown to be, a solid player. He was a late 2nd round pick. I think he was a 55th pick in the draft. And got a 4-year, $6 million deal. I imagine there's some pretty healthy, non-guaranteed, money in there, but if he's coming in at, let's call it 1.5-ish million on average salary, that's great for him. That still leaves them 20 million shy of the salary floor. So, still, a lot of room to make up there for OKC. So everybody might be sitting there with a nice little bonus check coming their way. My guess is they do at least one more signing of somebody, like they did a year ago when they signed Gabriel Deck to a contract. I'm gonna have one more of those coming for the Thunder, but yeah, it's put in our little future files here. Let's a month from now in mid-March, let's revisit trades. Then we can do it again at the regular season. So we'll kind of do a 1 month and then a 2-month.
That sounds good. That sounds good.
Trade deadline trades.
To answer your original question though, I think Derrick White probably, given the Norman Powell injury, has probably shown the best out of everybody.
I got it. I knew you had some green running through those veins. I knew it.
Hey, I gotta call it like I see it. And again, the Norman Powell, and we should talk about that. Out indefinitely with a fracture in his foot. Yeah, absolutely brutal. I saw people on social media going, guess the Blazers won the trade. No, this is about long term too. It's not about necessarily this season. Norman Powell looked like a great fit already with the Clippers. It was like you said, over 20 points per game. Just a bummer that now he's out with his foot fracture. How long this keeps him out, we'll see. I don't know. I wonder if this will have if there'll be any sort of reaction to this, as far as, do you bring back Paul George? Do you bring back Kawhi Leonard? If Norman Powell was continuing to put up 20 plus points per game, would that have given the Clippers more incentive to say, okay, let's get these guys back and go? I would like to think probably not. They're gonna be cautious regardless, but something to consider.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I think it probably is likely that doesn't really factor in. What does factor in though is they're now 2.5 behind the Timberwolves for 7. It kind of takes them probably fully out of the running to maybe make a real crazy run and get into the top 6, because they're 4 behind the Nuggets. So you're probably looking at Nuggets, Wolves, Dallas in that 5, 6, 7 battle there. There's 3 games separating those 3 teams. But what it does is it brings the Clippers back closer to the Lakers. You'd like to, if you're the Lakers, if you
Get
can,
the
you
8 seed.
maybe they catch Minnesota. I'm starting to think
Mm-hmm.
no. 4 games, that's starting to get to be a lot to make up with only 25 or so games left. But you'd rather be an 8 because then you at least host the second game at home in a play-in if you lose the first one. So that's just better for you. Now, if it's a home game against the Clippers, that doesn't really change anything in that case. But you'd rather have that if whether it's the Trailblazers or the Pelicans or the Spurs or whoever you get, and you get the 2 cracks, right, of getting into the postseason. So, but tough break for the Clippers, man. They, just it looked like, all right, they're going to be still kind of frisky and interesting to see what they look like, come postseason. And now it looks like they're just, I have a hard time seeing them being even competitive in a series with the Suns or Warriors at the top of the conference. I don't think it'll happen.
Agreed. All right. We do need to talk about Zach LaVine. Going to see a knee specialist. That's not great. I mean, Chicago has been so good this season. They've dealt with a ton of injuries, but now I mean, if this is anything significant for Zach LaVine, this could change. This could change the outcome of the Eastern Conference playoffs. That's how good the Bulls have been. To where Zach LaVine, what happens here with his knee, could determine who makes it through the East. Now, I'm not going to say there's other teams that are undeserving or anything like that, but the Bulls are that big of a threat in the Eastern Conference that they could be the team to make it to the NBA Finals. Without Zach LaVine, though, that would be a really tall task.
Yeah, and I mean, this is how tight the East is. Miami's first, Boston is 6, and there's 4.5 games separating those 6 teams. So I mean, you're a good week from being near the top of the conference and a bad week from being near the bottom. I mean, the Bulls are only 4 games ahead of the Raptors in 7th. And what happens sometimes with injuries is you hit the point of no return, because let's not forget, Lonzo Ball's out, Alex Caruso is out, for them, and those guys are out long term. Patrick Williams is still out. They did get Derrick Jones Jr. back, so that is something on a positive front there. But yeah, you can get yourself in a position where all of a sudden you're struggling, and kind of goes back to maybe should have made a move at the deadline. Like there was probably stuff they could have done out there to do that. The other thing I worry about too is, let's just say LaVine, and let's be clear, we don't know that LaVine's necessarily going to be out any kind of long term. Number one, don't play in the All-Star game. There's no reason for him to play in the All-Star game.
The report I'm looking at here says he's still planning to participate.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Do it.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's nuts.
Keith, I literally have Lakers fans messaging me on a fairly daily basis saying, can LeBron just go and not play? Is there can he just not play in the All-Star? Is that possible? Because nobody wants to see their players get hurt. And if you're already dealing with an injury, just don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, I mean, take it from me, Kemba Walker getting hurt 2020, then the pandemic happened and everything kind of went to, sideways in the world. But he played 29 minutes in that All-Star game, including most of that fourth quarter. I don't know if people fully remember, but that was the LeBron Giannis draft. And those 2 guys their teams were going really, really hard at the end of that game, and ended up being a 2-point game because teams are trying to win a lot of times at that point. And, Kemba was out there for that whole final stretch and was, really never the same guy after that. He, was really, in rough shape the, next few weeks, and then the season shut down. Then he was never really right in the bubble, never right last year. So, sit out if you can. You already got the honor. That's the important part. You already got the honor. You don't need to play. But the other thing I was going to say, let's just say he does have to miss some time. That puts such a heavy load on DeMar DeRozan. And at his age, I'd be worried then, is he going to, even if you get LaVine back and Ball and Caruso, is now DeRozan going to be so worn down by the time you get to the playoffs that it's like you're just kind of limping in? And you're right. I mean, this could really be one that really impacts the way the East finishes.
It's almost like the human body, you hurt one knee, and then you try to play through it or whatever, and you're moving differently than you would normally, and you're putting more strain on other parts, and the next thing you know, you hurt something else because of that. That can happen within an NBA team as well. So if you don't have Zach LaVine, suddenly you're putting more pressure on other guys to step up, putting them in situations that you're maybe being asked to do a little bit too much, or you're asking guys to do things that are maybe outside their wheelhouse, and next thing you know, you deal with another injury, and it can snowball. It can be tough.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about, well, Ryan Arcidiacono to the Knicks. That's a thing that
Yeah,
happened.
rest of the season contract. Nick's
Mm-hmm.
filling out their roster. You've done 2 10 days with them prior. Now he's headed back there.
Speaking of injuries, though, Pat Connaughton, hopeful that he can return. Broke
Yep.
the broke a bone in his hand, shooting hand. Hopeful that he can return before the playoffs. But the Bucks are now one of the teams that's in pursuit of Goran Dragic. Now there's a handful of teams. There's a handful of teams that are after him, and there's probably even more than what's been reported. But the Lakers, the Clippers, the Warriors, they're all these teams. The Bucks are after him.
Basically, everybody's
Every
good.
team,
Good,
except for
good
the Lakers and
average.
Clippers, but
Sure.
but everybody is after.
That was Trevor, not me.
I had to add and Clippers into that to make myself feel a little bit better. Um, Everybody is after Goran Dragic, which makes sense, and I would expect the Mavs probably to have a say, even with Spencer Dinwiddie in there. The Miami
Sure.
Heat, I think they'll be out there too. A lot of teams are after him, but in terms of a team that really needs him, I could see where the Bucks could sell him on. Hey, we just lost one of our guards. We need somebody who can come in and eat some minutes for us. It's an
Mhm.
interesting landing spot for him. Dennis Schroeder is another guy that's been connected to Milwaukee. Should he wind up getting bought out? So it wouldn't shock me if the Bucks were able to land one of these guys, given they're the reigning champs. Typically, that carries some weight with guys who are in the buyout market, specifically veterans near the end of their career that want a shot to go out there
Mhm.
and win a ring. For a 35-year-old, that probably matters.
Yeah, I think my gut tells me
Mm-hmm.
Miami is where he's going to land. We already talked about this, but just as a reminder, the Heat can sign him if he's bought out by the Spurs when he is bought out by the Spurs because he went to a third team after he traded him away earlier this season, and it's just that one just makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I think the Bucks would be an interesting spot. I think they'll be right in that mix because you're kind of looking. I think you could get away on second units playing him and George Hill together. I think you can play him
Mm-hmm.
with Drew Holiday in their starting group too, because Holiday can defend, really anybody 1 through 3. You kind of put Dragic on the weakest guy out there and, hide him a little bit and let him do that thing and let him kind of, play 25 minutes a night off your bench and, control things. Could even be a part of their closing groups there in Milwaukee if they wanted to close really small. So I like that one quite a bit if that's, where it goes. But yeah, it was very funny. I thought John Hollinger had the funniest quote about it is because it was termed the Bucks are going to aggressively pursue him. And Hollinger's quote was, "They have the same exact deal to offer as every other team does. So what did you do? Just offer it louder? Like, do you yell when you're trying to get him?" So I thought that was kind of funny. As an aside, it was interesting. Someone asked Ime Udoka for the Celtics because they still have 3 roster spots to fill after all their trade deadline maneuvering. Does he have to get into recruiter mode a little bit here? And he kind of said, yeah, there's some of that and our players. And then he said, Brad Stevens obviously has recruiting experience from his time, as a college coach. So he did kind of say that is a lot of what happens is right. Guys are pushing. And he said, but what most guys it comes down to is they want a chance
Mm-hmm.
to play on a team that has a chance to win. So, that's kind of where it's at.
And that's where, and I know Hollinger was making a joke, but that's where aggressively matters because you're
Yeah.
going to have, like, for
Yeah.
example, and obviously this didn't work out, but last season, the Lakers came in and said, well, if it means getting Andre Drummond, sure, we'll offer you a starting spot. Right? That's where teams can get aggressive and say, Goran Dragic,
Yeah. Be
yeah, oh
careful.
yeah, yeah, you got to be right. But that's
Sure.
where if you're
Well,
the
yeah.
Bucks and you decide we really need Goran Dragic, you can come in and say, you know what, we've got 20 plus minutes a night for you. Other teams
Yeah.
are saying, maybe you're not an every night player for them. We've got a
Yeah.
set.
We'll figure it
That's
out.
where
Yeah.
teams can
Exactly.
differentiate themselves is how big of a role can they offer the player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, especially when all the money
Mm-hmm.
is the same, right? Because it's roughly the same. A handful of these teams have maybe they can bump it a little bit by giving some of the mid level that they have left or whatever. But yeah, it's that's exactly it. You're pitching them on roll minutes and all that stuff. Because when everything else is equal, that's where it's at. And then you also have Miami and LA are going to be like, hey, for the first couple months, like, do you really want to shovel
Mm-hmm.
snow in Milwaukee? Like, wouldn't you rather just come here and,
Did you see the Super
pop out of
Bowl?
the car in your shorts? And yeah,
It's like
exactly.
80
Right. Yeah,
something, and
exactly.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt.
Um, okay, last thing we need to finish with. little bit of drama. Davis Bertans taking some parting shots. The Washington Wizards talking about the chemistry not being so great there. We say it all the time, winning cures all. And that's true, even in locker rooms. When you start to lose, though, things start to fall apart. He said it's tough to have team chemistry when every single day the team is basically fighting with each other about, I want to get more minutes, I want a bigger role. That's the biggest part of struggles for most guys during the season. It's kind of early on that doesn't show up because everybody's trying to figure out what's going on. Once it starts going downhill, it's hard to turn things around and start going up again. Interesting, given the way the Wizards season has gone. You could see where when they're winning, everybody's probably on board and okay, yeah, let's go.
Yep.
But once they start losing, they start thinking, well, could I be doing a little bit better here if we're going to be losing anyway? And then things really start to snowball on you.
Yeah, and this is a good example of it. Sounds great to have 10, 12, 13 guys who are really good. That sounds really good until everybody's healthy and available. Then all of a sudden it's, all right, this guy's not playing, this guy's not playing, this guy's only playing 10 minutes a night. And that's where all the chirping starts happening. As you said, if you're winning games, it's a little hard because you're going to be a huge jerk if you come out and complain when the team is winning games. And lo and behold, when the Wizards were winning was when they didn't have Thomas Bryant, didn't have Rui Hachimura, didn't have a couple other guys. Then they get everybody healthy, and then it becomes, Wes Unseld Jr., first-time head coach. He's having to deal with all of this. I'm sure daily it was, a conversation of, hey, I can't get you in the lineup right now. Where does, how do we do that? I will say, I remember asking Brad Stevens, this was several years ago, about, is it hard to have those conversations? And he said, it's honestly, it was the hardest part of my job as a coach is looking some guy who kills himself in practice every single day and tell him, like, I can't get you in the games. Like, I just don't have room. And he said, you have to be the right kind of guy who will still do that every day in practice, knowing I'm not going to play in the game tonight. And he said, and that can be really hard on some guys. I think that's hard on young players too, because every young player who comes into the NBA was awesome somewhere else, right? They've always probably been, if not the best player, they were probably at worst the second best player on every team they played with their entire life. And then they come into the NBA and it's like, yeah, here's 5 minutes every fifth game, like at the end of a blowout. Like, that's really, really hard to adjust to that. And you see sometimes some guys, they never make that adjustment and they wash out and they end up, playing somewhere else and, those kind of things. So, yeah, I mean, I get it from that side, but yeah, I mean, this is Bertans basically, saying, I think this is his way of saying, yeah, I'm not unhappy I got traded, away from the Wizards. And we'll see. That trade is probably the one I'm going to change my mind on the most here over the next couple years as we see, or where do the Mavs go from here? Where do the Wizards go from here? What happens with the players involved? Just because it's kind of fascinating where it's almost an equal salary dump on both sides of, like, hey, just shuffle some deck chairs around and get out of here.
Yeah, both sides were like, I'd rather have your problem. Really? Because I would rather have your problem. All right, let's just switch. Yeah, it's interesting. I think it tells you a little bit about kind of the mental makeup of NBA teams, sports teams in general. Once things start to go south, once teams start losing, that's when players start to become a bit more concerned about their own numbers, their own stats, their own opportunities. And when you have a team that's got a lot of guys that feel like they should be playing, that can be a difficult situation for a coach. That can be a difficult situation for a front office to manage. Sometimes having depth can be a bad thing. Usually not. Usually it's something that you do want. But this is kind of the dark side to it, the tough part of having that kind of depth. It's having depth is a good problem to have, but it also can create some problems.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Like, no doubt about that. Yeah, it's yeah, it can really cause you issues going down the line. But yeah, it's let's see now where this goes, because I'm not entirely sold Bertans' role is going to be all that much better in Dallas. Dallas has a good amount of bigs that they play already too. I'm sure he'll work in there. His main thing is just make shots, right? And they're going to get him on the floor, without a doubt. But yeah.
All right. Well, let's wrap things up there. Appreciate everybody for joining us. Hopefully you guys enjoyed a great Super Bowl weekend. And now we're ready to focus on the NBA. Make sure you are following right here at the NBA front office YouTube channel. Don't forget to ring that notification bell as well. And of course, if you're listening to the podcast version of this, make sure you're subscribing over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. Till next time, everybody, stay safe and see ya.